husband won't give me his phone password. Would I be wrong to not give our second son his last name? I, 25 female, have been with my husband, 25 male, for 7 years now. 4 years married. We have one 18-month-old son and another due by the end of this month. My husband joined the army in 2022, so about 2 years ago when he found out I was pregnant with my first. We were having financial issues at the time and thought it was our best option. We're not in debt, but we're also not where I want to be financially. Then I have decided I want no more children, since I would want to give my kids a financially stress-free life and be able to live comfortably within our means. My husband, on the other hand, everyone's texting me to get out. I'm going! My husband, on the other hand, wants his baby girl. I would love to also, but it's just not financially smart in this economy. He makes remarks such as, well, this is your last kid, not mine. I'm having more kids in my life, etc. He hasn't treated me the best and doesn't understand the toll pregnancy has in a woman's body with a toddler running around. He says I'm a financial burden since I'm a stay-at-home mom. Also states that I don't do enough as I'm currently 38 weeks and 3 days pregnant. I complain about back pain or being tired and he replies, of what? You sleep in while I wake up every morning at 5:30. Or simply replies, me too. He gets home and takes a nap every day. He says since I'm the mom, I should take care of all the baby needs. All this to say, cherry on top, he's been hiding his phone and passcode since coming back from basic training, so about 1 year ago. He said I need to trust him and that I've never found anything on his phone before. Now for me, this is a red flag, because why all of a sudden the change of attitude for his phone? This man sleeps, shits, and has his phones on his hand 24/7. If he plays our son a YouTube video and I'm around, he'll just put the phone away. I let him pick our first son's name. He's a junior. And wanted to have this stupid tradition of naming all of our kids with the same first letter like his father, to which I agreed on. Wasn't a big deal for me. Now I'm not in love with the name that we chose for my second son on the way because it's not my first option. I told him I need to be at peace and I want his passcode if he's not hiding anything on his phone. He refuses to give me his passcode by all means. This was never an issue in our 7 years of being together until now. So I will let him know the day of my C-section I will pick out the name I chose and give this son my last name only. I kept my maiden name and never changed it. I want to know if this is petty of me or am I being reasonable after the bullshit he's done this whole pregnancy and refusing to give his passcode. I have even thought about not letting him be in the birth process either. Keep in mind he wasn't present for our first childbirth since they didn't allow him to come back, which I later found out he chose not to be in the birth so he wouldn't fall behind in the graduation. So, would I really be the asshole? And yes, both of my sons are his biological sons.
Am I the asshole for not letting a pregnant woman have any of my birthday cake? My birthday was yesterday, and my husband invited his best friend Matt and his best friend's pregnant girlfriend Jane out for a barbecue. They live 2 houses down from us. It was only us, our 3 children, and then them and their 3 kids. I spent about $90 on hamburger and hot dogs. Matt also showed up with 2 pounds of hamburger. While the guys cooked, I went swimming with all of the kids in our pond. Jane sat near the guys on her phone. Around 5:30ish, the guys called the kids up for food. Me and my middle child, 9, weren't hungry yet, so we kept swimming. We spent a good 40 plus extra minutes in the pond on our tubes. I wasn't paying any attention to anything that was going on near the grill. Around 6:15ish is when my husband said he was going to make a store run for beer. So I tell my son that we should probably go and eat now. My husband and Matt are gone by the time we get up to the grill. So is Jane. Well, we get up to the grill and all of the food is gone. Literally everything. I call my husband and ask him where all of the food is, and he said that it should be on the grill. I tell him that everything is gone. There was a long pause before he goes, quote, Jane asked if she could take some leftovers, but I didn't think she would take all of it. He then tells me there was at least 8 burgers and 10 hot dogs left, as well as macaroni salad when he left for the store just 10 minutes prior. I tell him to call Matt and see where the fuck all the food is. He does. He then calls me back and says that Matt claims Jane only took a few and that they had already been eaten. But my oldest son, 13, straight up tells me he saw Jane walk off of our property carrying the entire dish. Ooh. One of those extra large tinfoil barbecue dishes. Anyways, I'm pissed at this point. Me and my son hadn't eaten anything. My husband is also pissed, but he just grabbed me and my son something from the store instead of making a big fuss about it. I don't really blame him. Him and Matt work together, so it is what it is. But anyways, much to my surprise, Jane and her kids come back over 45 minutes later and ask if they can have some of my cake. I tell Jane that her kids can, but she can't. She asks why, and I said, quote, I'm pretty sure you've eaten plenty, considering you took off with my entire barbecue dinner before me and my son could eat anything. She tried arguing that my husband told her she could have it, that half of it was hers because they brought 2 pounds of hamburger meat, and that she didn't realize me and my kid hadn't eaten. She was by the grill the entire time. I just shrugged my shoulders and walked away. She then told her kids, let's go, and they left without any cake. Now I'm feeling like I may be the asshole. No one has said anything, but I know there's tension.
My boyfriend stalked me around Ibiza on my girls' holiday. Story time. So I've recently been seeing this boy who we'll call Steve. We weren't official or anything like that, but things were going well. When we first got together, Steve made it quite clear that he didn't like the idea of me going on girls' holidays or girls' trips. I already had this little Ibiza trip booked, so I was gonna go on it. On the run up to the holiday, he joked with his boys about them going as well and meeting up with me, which I thought was a little bit bizarre, and so did all of his friends. So whilst we're on the trip, he's being weird. I was there for 10 days. The first 4 days he is begging me to share my location. I refused to tell him what hotel we were staying in because, I don't know, I just didn't feel like he needed to know. It got to the point where I literally had to stop messaging him because he was being so weird and controlling, but he continued to harass me. It got to the point where I ended up blocking his number. We're now a week into the girls' holiday. I'm at Ocean Beach. I'm having a great time. And my best friend taps me on the shoulder and goes, isn't that Steve? I look over and Steve is sat at the bar at Ocean Beach just looking around. He then catches my eye and is like, which in itself is a nick. I go over and I'm like, what the hell are you doing here, boy? With his chest, he says, well, you wouldn't tell me where you were, so I just thought I'd come and find you. Sorry. I just think people don't hear the things they say and how weird they are. He was like, yeah, I've been trying to get your attention, but I just didn't want to interrupt your holiday. He said, I thought it would have been a good time at High, but then I saw you chatting to some boys and I just thought that wasn't a good time. It's never a good time, Steve. It's never a good time to stalk someone to Ibiza. I also found out that he had tried to find out what hotel room I was in. He'd found the hotel I was staying at. You think this is bad? Oh, it gets worse. He then whips out his phone and he's like, I need to show you something. I'm like, go on then, yeah. Opens his camera roll to an album titled Tashi's Ibiza Trip and proceeds to show me all of these videos and pictures he's taken of me whilst I've been in Ibiza. At different clubs, restaurants, at the pool, at a hotel. At what point do we consider legal action? He didn't have a hotel. He had been just wandering the streets and sleeping on the beach. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know what to do, so I broke up with him on the spot. My friends were so creeped out. I told him he needs to leave and he needs to fly back home and never ever speak to me again. Is there anything else I can do in this situation? I actually can't believe this is my life.
A story that I haven't told many people because frankly I feel like everybody would think I'm crazy. When I was 16 years old, I went on a ski trip with my school. I live in Australia and snow is rare, so we had to go an 18-hour bus ride down south to the snow. I was with my friends, we're having a good time, we were excited to go snowboarding, but on only the second day of this trip my entire life shifted. So because we weren't experienced in snowboarding, most of us school kids would go with the people who worked at this snow lodge and we'd all snowboard as one big group down the slopes. Some of the courses were more easy, some of them were more difficult, really just depending on what sort of experience you had as a snowboarder. I had none, so I was snowboarding with a big group of people, but I was the person at the very back of this group. Everyone starts to turn around this big mountain. Because I'm 5 seconds behind everyone, I turn around the mountain 5 seconds later. Mind you, it's a super busy day on the snow, it's a beautiful sunny day and there are people everywhere, and not just us school kids, a lot of people. But when I turn around this big mountain, everyone is gone. Everybody who was in front of me was gone, and everybody who was skiing or snowboarding behind me was gone. There were people who were not in the group I was snowboarding with, other people behind me. So once I went around this mountain, they should have followed. I should have been able to see everybody in front of me because after I turned this mountain, it was just a straight long slope down the hill. But I was dead alone. I'm obviously instantly confused, shocked. I don't understand what's happening. I get my phone out to call my best friend who was on this ski trip with me. And I remember so distinctly, my phone was on 75% charge. It was charged. But as soon as I pressed this little circle to enter my phone, my whole screen went black and the no battery signal came up. The only way I could make sense of what happened is that everybody somehow just beat me to the bottom of this course and everyone behind me somehow went past me without me realizing. I was just grasping at straws. So I continued to just keep snowboarding down the hill, hoping that I'd just make it to the end. The thing is that there was no end.
There was no end to this course or whatever alternate reality course I had just jumped into. As I mentioned, I was not an experienced snowboarder, so I was trying my best to snowboard, but I kept falling over. I decided to just eventually give up, clip my snowboard off and walk. I walked for like an hour. I was tired. I was carrying this heavy snowboard. I was walking in snow, which is just as hard as walking in sand. And after what feels like forever, I finally came to this, what looked like an abandoned ski lift. It was really dingy and old and creaky and looked scary. I thought my best chance was to get onto this ski lift so I could get up high and have a look around, hoping that maybe I'd find where the main area is, because in the main area there's like a bar and cafes and restaurants and whatever. I thought if I can see that, I know which direction to walk in and I can just make my way over there before the sun sets. But when I get onto this ski lift, there's nothing but snow and trees. And obviously I was freaking out because it was sunset, like it was about to be dark. But then I was also thinking, how the fuck did this happen? Like I was with a group of people in a busy area. And also because I was a child and a beginner at snowboarding, obviously they took us to a course that was super close to like the main area. The fact that I'm now on this single seater ski lift looking out 360 views and there's nothing, I didn't know, what do you even do? And it was on that ski lift, I just broke down sobbing. Like I genuinely thought I was going to die. I just wanted my mum. And this ski lift just drops me off at nowhere, like no destination, no platform, nothing. The cabin that we were staying at, the way to get to this main area to go skiing and snowboarding in was that we had to catch a shuttle bus and then an underground subway. The sun set, it's dark. You have to understand how scary it was. Because when I say dark, I mean I couldn't barely see what was in front of me. There's no city lights anywhere. Didn't have the torch on my phone to shine. Just as I was about to give up and sit down and accept what was going to happen, I saw like this glowing light in the distance. And what it led me to was like this glowing tunnel with a staircase leading down into it. And what led me to the bottom was an underground subway. How that was there, I don't know. Why it was there, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense for there to be a proper station there because I was in the middle of nowhere. But sure enough, the subway came and I jumped on it. And it took me to the shuttle buses and I took a shuttle bus back to the cabin. And when I walked into the cabin, all the school kids I was with, all the teachers that were there were all having like dinner together. And I was like, was no one looking for me? And everybody very nonchalantly, not in like even a rude way, were just like, oh, hey, Chloe, there you are. It was almost as if they were hearing me through a filter and they weren't grasping the gravity of what I was trying to say. I don't know. The whole thing was weird. The energy was off. For the next few days, I stayed in the cabin. I refused to leave the cabin. And then when I got home, things felt slightly off. I don't really know how to explain it, but for example, certain objects in my room were in like a different place. And it's not as if anybody in my family would have gone in and rearranged my room. I didn't feel like that's what happened. It felt as if that is where it belonged. But I knew that it was in a different spot before I left. Even just weird things like timing felt different. Everything was just slightly tweaked. When I told my sister about this story a few years later, she said to me, there probably is a timeline out there where you did get lost in the snow and quantum jumped. And she said there's probably a timeline out there where our family is grieving you, which is so scary and sad to think. But that's my story where if I told anybody, they probably wouldn't believe me.
Probably the most infamous serial killer couple of all time, Fred and Rose West. This was a couple made in hell. Like, the fact that these two people found each other is insane. What are the odds? Because they're just as evil as the other one. They're both just so sick and twisted. And they had like really similar childhoods. Spoiler alert, they were not happy childhoods. So Fred West grew up with a mother who said that she would break her boys in. And that means that she would sleep with her sons for their first time. And that's how Fred West lost his V card at only 12 years old. Fred's father also taught him that he could do whatever he wanted to whoever he wanted. So Fred West was a little creepy creep in his adolescence, trying to assault multiple other girls, including essaying his own younger sister, which he got like no repercussions for. Because of course he didn't. When Fred was an adult, he always had a thing for younger girls. Like when he was 19 years old, he got a 13-year-old girl pregnant. And a few years later, Fred got his first wife, Rena, pregnant. Around the same time, he got 3 other young girls pregnant, including a 17-year-old runaway named Anna, who tragically disappeared before she ever gave birth. Because that's the thing about Fred, everywhere he went, young girls would mysteriously vanish. So at the point that Fred met Rose, his first wife was not living with him because she was always kind of like bouncing in and out of his life, but their 2 children were living with Fred. Although his oldest child, Charmaine, was technically not his biological child, he did know about this and he did raise his child regardless. So now let's talk about Rose's upbringing and Rose's childhood before we discuss the horrific crimes that Fred and Rose committed together. So when Rose's mother was pregnant with her, she went through electric shock therapy multiple times, essentially deep frying Rose's brain while Rose was still in the womb. So as a baby, Rose was extremely docile and she would just like bang her head against the wall or the side of her crib. She was also essayed by her father at a very young age, and then she would go on to like use this to get what she wanted from her dad. She would also then go on to essay her younger siblings just like Fred did, and by 15 years old, Rose was an extremely messed up child with such a warped sense of intimacy. She was also extremely violent. At only 15 years old, people were extremely terrified of this girl. It was also at 15 years old that Rose met and started her relationship with the 27-year-old Fred West. And at only 16 years old, Rose would have her first of 8 children she would have with Fred, a little daughter they named Heather. So by 17, Rose was like the mother to 3 children. She was mothering her child with Fred, but also his 2 first children he had with his first wife, who was not at the picture at this point, and she was extremely abusive to all of these children, especially the oldest child, which was not biologically Fred, Charmaine. And at 17 years old, Rose killed Charmaine, who was only 8 years old, for literally no reason, and Fred did not seem to care at all. And then when Fred's first wife, Rena, came back around looking for her children, Fred killed her as well. So a little while later is when Fred and Rose moved into their now infamous house of horrors, where not only would Rose do S work in front of her children and also make them join in her S work, they built a dungeon of torture in the cellar of the home, where Fred and Rose would both equally take part in the kidnap, essay, torture, and murder of upwards of 30 young girls as young as 15 years old. The crimes that were committed in the cellar were some of the worst I've ever read about, and honestly, Rose might have even been worse than Fred. After inflicting full body injuries and wounds to their victims, Rose would force them to take baths of heavily salted water. I don't know what it was about that detail, but when I read that, it like stopped me in my tracks. Fred and Rose's children, especially their daughters, would also suffer greatly down in this cellar. In Fred's life, it was normal that his mother broke him in, so he would do the same thing to his own daughters, essaying them as young as when they were 8 years old. And because it was, normal for Rose, this happened to her with her own father, she would then tell her very young children that this was their father's job. So in the early 90s, there was talk around town that, whispers got to the police officers that Fred and Rose's oldest daughter, Heather, has gone missing. And Fred, Rose, and their many children had a little family joke regarding the whereabouts of Heather. And it went, if you don't, behave, you're gonna end up just like Heather, buried under the back porch. It wasn't until 1994 that it was discovered that nobody had seen Heather since 1987. Police got a search warrant for the home, and that's where they found the remains of their daughter Heather in the garden, as well as the remains of many other young girls, which they were not expecting. They found one femur bone and then another femur bone, and then they found a third. So they go up to them and it's like, unless she had 3 legs, you're a serial killer. Not only did Fred confess to everything, but he actually took full responsibility for all of the murders, claiming that his beloved wife Rose had no involvement. Unfortunately, Fred would never go to trial, as shortly after this, he unalived himself in prison. Rose was being charged with 10 counts of murder, but she claimed that she had no involvement and that she was actually also a victim of Fred's. Ultimately, nobody bought this. There were a lot of people that testified that she was just as, if not worse than Fred. So Rose was sentenced to life in prison, where she is at to this day, and a year later, their infamous house of horrors was torn down to the ground. Many experts do believe that Rose was the dominant force in these horrific crimes being committed, which is extremely rare for a male and female criminal couple. It's usually the man that's like the dominant force and the woman being more submissive.
I do not trust you if you take back your man after he cheated on you, or even like just dogs you out or just treats you like shit. Like, I just cannot trust someone who like lets people walk all over them. Like, babes, where's your self-respect? Like, I just cannot stand someone who doesn't learn how to walk away from a person that has done them dirty. Like, I just cannot stand that. I do not trust you if you say shit like, oh, that's embarrassing. Like, you want to go take photos? That's embarrassing. In public? That's embarrassing. Bitch, just say you're insecure. Just say you're insecure. Like, just say that you're boring and you care too much about what other people think of you. Like, just say that shit. Call me weird. I don't give a fuck. I do not trust you if you're friends with my fucking op, okay? Like, how are you gonna be kikiing with my op and know everything about me and be so close to me? Because the way I operate is like, I always like roles reverse it, and if I wouldn't do what they're doing to me, we're not gonna be friends. Sorry. Like, honestly, it just gives that you're talking shit about me with that bitch that I don't like, and their excuse is always, I'm gonna be neutral, like, I'm not gonna choose sides. Like, girl, you already choose the side because you're still friends with her. Like, I don't trust you if you make fun of random people. Like this girl would literally hate on randoms that would like cross the street. And that's just so fucking weird. Like, who are you to like judge and analyze a random? Like, it's giving you hate yourself. I do not trust you if you just cannot let another girl near you get a compliment. Like, I once told this girl that I love her blush, and then her best friend right next to her was like, it's my blush actually. Like, okay, do you want credit? I'm confused. I don't trust you if you don't smile back at strangers. Like, I be smiling at pretty girls and they be like, I'm sorry, I don't trust you if you call your dad daddy, cause what the fuck? Especially if you're past the age of 20, like, I don't trust you if you talk shit about someone's house or car, cause like, bitch, like, what the fuck? Are you gonna pay for it? So why are you talking? I don't trust you if you post ugly photos of me or even like send it around like you're weird. Especially when I told you, girl, I look ugly in this photo. Please don't send it to no one. Please don't post it. You're weird. Like, you're just weird. I don't trust you if you have a burner account to leave hate comments, because like you're literally like pathetic. Like, you have nothing else better to do. Like, whatever. Like, you must really hate yourself. I don't trust you if you insult someone and then you are like, oh, I'm just kidding. Oh, I'm just playing. Oh, it's a joke. You can't take a joke. Oh, but if I say your breath stinks, is that a joke? Oh, okay.
So last night I told Bryn, my daughter, about my first love, which I said to her was maybe the greatest love of my life, which is shocking because it's high school. So when you have kids and they're talking about girls or boys in high school, you know, the feelings are real. The emotions are real. I had a massive, meaningful love relationship. It was this guy, his name was Mike Parrish. He was on the football team and he was in 10th grade and I was in 11th grade, and he was so handsome and like so athletic. And he was local Florida guy, total opposites. You know, I'm like the New York girl with the crazy background, and he had never been on an airplane. And we fell madly in love to the point where I was in the dorm and he was a day student, and he would come at night from 8:30 to 9:15 sometimes and sit outside with me and talk to me when he could. And if he couldn't, I would wait on the line for the payphone, and then we would get on the phone for the whole, I think it was half hour, 8:45 to 9:15, that we could talk. And it's funny because I think that me never having seen a positive relationship as a child, I think that it started out really early in high school when I was in this relationship, that after 2 years of being together and we were very much in love, influences around me, people around me were saying you can't just like have one boyfriend and you're not going to like go to college and still have a boyfriend. And so I ended it and took somebody else actually to the prom. And I ended up seeing Mike that night at the prom because I really regretted my decision. We both went to college and he kind of, I think was brokenhearted because of what had happened. And then we finally did get back together. And he was like a love of my life. Like it was high school. And when I tell you, it was real. I had a true love in high school. Did you?
Am I in the wrong for not fixing my wife's mom guilt? My wife, 33 female, and I, 35 male, have been married for 4 years now and have 2 sons, 3 and 1. With 2 young kids and both of us working full time, we obviously don't get a lot of time for ourselves and even less for the 2 of us as a couple. We've had maybe 2 dates since our youngest son was born. My wife has at least been able to attend a couple of her friends' weddings, but I haven't had social time just for myself in probably 6 months. My wife has been lamenting our lack of social lives and asking me to plan something for us to do as a couple because she doesn't have the mental energy for it. A few weeks ago, I saw that one of her favorite bands is playing a show in the town we used to live in before we got married. We still have friends there, so I reached out to them to see if they wanted to attend the show with us. They agreed and even offered for my wife and I to stay with them for the night so that we wouldn't have to drive home after the show. I told my wife about it, and instead of being happy or excited, she immediately went off about how we have no one to watch the kids, we've never both been away from them for a night, etc. I told her that I already had asked my parents to come stay with the kids for the night and they were excited for it. But my wife kept going off about how our kids haven't been sleeping well, what if XYZ happens, etc. I did my best to calm her down and asked her if I should just cancel the whole thing because it doesn't sound like she's on board with my idea. She said that she wants to do it, but just is worried about leaving the kids for the night. I told her that the plan is literally exactly what she asked me to do, but if she doesn't want to do it, then we can cancel. She again said that she didn't want to cancel. Well, the concert was this past Sunday. My parents arrived Friday so that they could have a night with us and the kids at home to get familiar with our routine. Everything went fine that night, but the next day as we were getting things packed and ready to go, my wife became hesitant. Instead of packing, she was running around asking my mom and dad a bunch of questions related to the kids. I tried to get her to focus on the concert and seeing friends, but I couldn't do it. Eventually, I asked her if she still wanted to go. She said that she wasn't sure. She told me that she was feeling really guilty about leaving the kids overnight. I told her that we both needed to have time for us to behave like adults, and this is our chance. She then told me that I should just go by myself because she doesn't think that she'll enjoy herself. So that's what I did. I went and saw friends and spent the night and had a great time. When I went home the next day, my wife was upset with me. She told me that she didn't think that I would actually go without her. She said that having my parents there without me was uncomfortable for her. She told me that I should have done more to soothe her mom guilt so that she could have gone with. So am I in the wrong?
Am I the asshole for telling my brother-in-law and his wife that I don't want to follow their birth plan? So I, 34 female, am a surrogate for my brother-in-law, Simon, 39 male, and his wife, Michelle, 38 female. Simon and Michelle have struggled with infertility for years. They've tried IVF and even surrogacy before, but the person changed her mind at the last second. They have outwardly shown their jealousy of my husband, James, 34 male, and me for having children, especially as only one of them was planned, and our oldest was born when we were 16. They came to me last year and begged me to be their surrogate. I had doubts, as did my husband, but I felt bad for them and decided to go through with it. James supported my decision and has acted like he did with my previous pregnancies, sweet and caring. Simon and Michelle, on the other hand, are very controlling. They made up meal plans for me, and I'm taking all these supplements as well as attending multiple classes. When I told them I knew what to do during pregnancy, they didn't listen and said to me that just because I was pregnant 4 times doesn't mean I'm an expert. I gave up trying to dissuade them as I knew nothing would work. We started going over the birth plan earlier this week, and it caused a huge argument. They wanted me to do an unmedicated water birth, and I flat out refused. For my second pregnancy, I didn't have enough time for any pain relief, and the pain was horrific. I have quite a high pain tolerance, but this experience was awful, and I never wanted to do that again. Kudos to anyone who has unmedicated births. As for the water birth, I don't like the idea of being submerged in water with blood, other fluids, and possibly poop. They weren't very happy about this. They said this was their baby, and they should decide how they were born. I retorted and said, this is my body, and I should decide how I want to push out a human that I am so generously caring for you. A lot of shouting happened, and I started to get overwhelmed very quickly. I started crying, and Michelle rolled her eyes and told me to grow up. James told her to shut up, which started Simon off, and it was just a mess. James and I left the house, and I was crying the whole way home and regretting ever agreeing to be their surrogate. It took James and me a few days to calm down, and during those days, we didn't have any contact with Simon or Michelle. Simon and Michelle called James's parents and complained to them about what happened. So they called us and we explained our side of the story. They were shocked at what happened and said they were fully on our side and that they would talk to Simon and Michelle. I'm due in 2 weeks and I'm so nervous. A part of me doesn't want them there, but I know they have to be, seeing as it's their child. James disagrees. He said that he'll have them kicked out if they do anything to upset or stress me out. Even my oldest agrees with him, and he won't even be in the room. I sort of do feel like an asshole, but I don't know. It's a hard time right now.